Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of To The Point with me, Frank Pereira. My guest on the show this week is a former union minister in the UPA government and Congress MP in the Rajya Sabha, Mr. Ashwani Kumar. He's very articulate as well. Mr. Kumar, thank you for joining us on Rajya Sabha television. You know, the BJP has been embroiled in several controversies of late, the most significant of those being, of course, the Lalitgate issue involving the Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Mrs. Raje, as well as the Union Minister, Mrs. Sushma Swaraj. I want to know your take on the entire controversy, and are you happy with the kind of explanation that the BJP has been throwing at the Congress over the last, or at the nation over the last 2 weeks?
Well, first of all, let me correct you. It is more a Modi gate than a Lalit gate. For the simple reason that the Honorable Prime Minister has chosen to maintain his deafening silence, about which we have now got accustomed. It is very unfortunate that when senior leaders of his party are being hauled up by the opposition, and rightly so, for reasons of impropriety and illegality, he chooses not to say even a single word either in defense of the ministers or against what has been done. Meaning thereby that by silence, he has in fact admitted to culpability. As far as the Modi Gate issue is concerned, or the Lalit Modi issue is concerned, let me tell you that as far as the case against Ms. Raje is concerned, I think it is an unanswerable case. There is an admission, albeit indirectly, of culpability. Nobody has denied that a share of rupees 10 was sold for 96,000 rupees. I would ask anyone who's an expert in the stock market to give me any instance where any company has been able to sell its share at that kind of a premium. Number two, the money that was paid by way of 96,000 odd per share was received through a Mauritius company, and everybody who knows how foreign institutional investors and other foreign people who launder their money, send money into India through the Mauritius route, know that A, there is no taxation in Mauritius. Nobody asks you for the source of money in Mauritius. The money is received into Mr. Lalit Modi's account, and it is promptly transferred by way of share appreciation to Mr. Dushant's account. What more prima facie clinching evidence is required, at least to merit a detailed explanation beyond saying that it is a commercial transaction? How many of us can enter into this kind of a commercial transaction? That's the moot point. I think when you occupy these positions, you need to come up and give a very solid and credible explanation. Even if you treat it, in the very least, I say so, a case of gross impropriety, you still need to make amends for it. And Mr. L.K. Advani himself has hinted at the need to maintain moral and political credibility. I am totally against a system where anybody can allege anything against anyone. But where an allegation, as in this case, are backed by incontrovertible evidence, surely it is incumbent upon the Prime Minister to take action.
You know, similar allegations were made against you when you were the law minister and you stepped down. So somewhere do you feel let down?
No. In fact, I'm glad you asked me this question. In our case, we were crying from the housetops that there is nothing wrong. The law minister is entitled by his job requirement to look into a document which is being filed into a court. Nobody has said anything against me in terms of either any illegality, because this is my remit. And I pray to the Lord Almighty that no law minister in this country should ever be dissuaded from rendering advice to another department. Now, in this particular case, there is an admission of receipt of money. Our case is completely different. We were completely innocent. We resigned because we did not want a stalemate in Parliament. We resigned because we wanted the food security bill to be passed and not give an excuse. So in fact, in my press statement after I resigned, I said that I'm resigning for this reason, not because of any wrongdoing of any part.
Statement, yes.
And therefore, and the proof of the pudding is in its eating. I was not the minister in charge who took any decisions as far as coal is concerned. I was, as a law minister, doing my job in the presence of the law officers of the country. I could have been faulted for not doing my job. But since that is how politics was, we said that the parliament should be allowed to function. Our key legislation, namely the Food and Security Bill, should go through the parliament. And that was the reason. And there is no equivalence between why we resigned and why we are asking them to resign.
Fair enough. You spoke about the parliament session, and of course the monsoon session of parliament is just around the corner. We'll talk about that later in the show. But I want to go back to something that you said just now. You spoke about the silence of the Prime Minister, and you said that is shocking as far as the Congress is concerned. But the BJP's defense thus far has been that even the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was quiet. At that point in time, we kept asking him to come out and speak to the people of the nation, but he did not. So why are you pulling up Prime Minister Narendra Modi is one of their defense. The second point that I want to make is that they've said Mr. Rahul Gandhi and Mrs. Sonia Gandhi don't seem to be bothered about this issue because they have not come out and spoken about it. This is the line of the BJP spokesperson that I've heard on several other TV shows in the past. They said, why are the other congressmen so adamant about the Prime Minister responding to this situation?
Well, let me take your point first with respect to the comparison of Mr. Modi with Dr. Manmohan Singh. Dr. Manmohan Singh certainly spoke much more clearly and louder than Mr. Modi does. He may have spoken less, but whenever there was a need to speak, he spoke. He spoke on 2G issues, he spoke on coal, he spoke on all of those issues. And he said we were ready to debate any issue in Parliament. We have, in comparison, not heard even a whisper from the current Prime Minister. As far as Mrs. Sonia Gandhi and Mr. Rahul Gandhi's view on this is concerned, let me tell you that they are the leaders of the Congress party.
But they haven't spoken to the media about it thus far.
But we know that on every issue the Congress president doesn't have to speak, on every issue the vice president doesn't have to speak.
That's the same argument that the BJP is coming up with, that, for every issue, all the senior ministers have spoken about the issue, they've had their say, so there's no need for the Prime Minister to answer.
This is a completely wrong comparison for the simple reason that the Prime Minister is the head of the government. In a cabinet form of government where parliamentary accountability demands that the Prime Minister, as leader of the House, comes and explains his position, there is a different obligation, constitutional, political and moral obligation on the Prime Minister than a need for the president of a principal opposition party herself or himself to speak on a particular issue. And in any case, for the last 3, 4, 5 days, Mr. Rahul Gandhi is not here. And therefore, don't for a moment think that what is being spoken by the Congress spokespersons or by the Congress leaders does not have the full backing of the leadership.
So, what is it that the Congress wants? Do you all want to see Sushma Swaraj and Vasundhara Raje axed, or what is it that the Congress really wants?
Well, we certainly want them to resign and to step down, face a probe, and if they are found not to be guilty, come back if the Prime Minister so desires.
There are reports in the media today that suggest that, the Congress is looking for a deal as far as axing of Vasundhara Raje and Sushma Swaraj are concerned. If Vasundhara Raje and Sushma Swaraj are axed, then the Congress will allow the GST to pass through Rajya Sabha. Is there any truth in that?
I don't know, because I have also read a similar report in the newspaper, but I can tell you this. The Parliament will not function until the legitimate demands are met.
So your demand is that they should go, and that's only then will you allow the Parliament to function?
That is the position today.
Okay. And but the BJP's point is that, you're not going to stop at that. Then you're going to want Smriti Irani to resign, and then you'll probably want Pankaja Munde to resign. So are you going to stop at just these two ministers, or are you going to go further?
It all depends upon how many of their other ministers get involved in wrongdoings.
What's your take on the entire Smriti Irani episode and the entire issue?
Well, I have only read from newspaper reports that there is an issue about her degree, and court has taken cognizance of that issue. I think she is occupying a very important position, and as head of the Human Resource Development Department and the Education Department, if the minister's own educational credentials are in doubt, I think propriety demands that till she is cleared, she should step down. Now, how the case proceeds and what the government decides is for them to decide. But we believe that in terms of a serious question mark having been raised, pending a decision by the court, in terms of the morality of it, it would be better for her to step aside till she gets exonerated by the court.
You know, let's go back to Lalitgate now, because that particular issue has been in the news for a few weeks now, and it's been getting a lot of significant mileage as well. You know, Priyanka Gandhi and Robert Vadra's names were also thrown into the mix by Lalit Modi, and, you know, the BJP also caught on to that, and they said that the Congress needs to answer why these two individuals met Lalit Modi and what did they have to do with that meeting with Lalit Modi.
This is a joke. You run into somebody in a restaurant, is that a meeting? By definition, is that a meeting? If I run into a criminal on the road or he says, yes, hello to me, do I become a criminal by association?
So there was nothing beyond that, is what you're saying.
I mean, apparently that has been stated by the spokesperson, and what has been stated by the spokesperson is the stand of the Congress party. I mean, to reduce serious issues of political morality, conduct, and propriety to this kind of profane comparisons is very unfortunate. It does not behove a ruling party which claimed great virtues in respect of transparency and governance and probity in public life to shirk an issue which has caught the imagination of the people. Of course, it is for them to either cut their losses or to keep being brazen about it. And if they choose to be brazen about it, surely the political process will take its course, and sooner or later, they will be called to account in the court of the people of India.
One final question on Lalitgate before we slip into a break. You know, Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi recently went to London during the International Day of Yoga, and there were several people within the BJP and, you know, several reports, rumor mills, of course, doing the rounds saying that they had gone there to ensure that there was damage control and more, and Lalit Modi does not spill any more beans.
I can only say that this is a poor joke, and therefore I don't need to comment on such frivolous arguments. I think these need to be dismissed with the contempt that they deserve. And I think the least said the better, because by commenting on them, I would only be lending them legitimacy and respect, and I have no intention of doing that.
All right. On that note, we'll slip into a short break. But on the other side, we'll continue talking to Mr. Ashwani Kumar about the Congress's strategy, really, as far as the monsoon session is concerned. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television in conversation with Senior Congress leader Mr. Ashwani Kumar. Mr. Kumar, what is the Congress's strategy as far as the monsoon session of Parliament is concerned?
In any parliamentary democracy, and India is no exception, the mandate of the opposition is to oppose, expose and depose. We will continue to expose this government for its wrongful acts and for the improprieties and illegalities committed by its ministers. We hope that the Prime Minister will assess the mood of the nation and the mood of Parliament and take suitable action. If that is not done, I see very little chance of Parliament functioning in the monsoon session.
There are some crucial bills that are to come up in the monsoon session.
The responsibility for having those bills passed rests squarely with the government. And please let me remind you and your viewers that it was the leaders of the BJP, when they were in the opposition, who said that stalling Parliament was a legitimate form of protest. Now, they can't have two sets of standards when they're in the opposition and when they're in the government.
But the BJP has been saying that the Congress has been singled out as far as these issues are concerned. Yes, the smaller regional parties were vocal initially about the entire controversy, but now they seem to have, mellowed down, and they seem to be not too bothered about the issue as such, and the Congress is going to be left standing alone.
I'm not sure that is a right assessment. I think there are a number of parties who share the Congress's perspective. We will be engaging with them. We will have floor management with them. We will take all our allies and supporting parties together on this issue. And you can be certain that our voice will be raised loud and clear, and deafeningly so, for the people of India to hear what we have to say about the ruling government.
The GST Bill is your bill. Of course, you introduced it in Parliament,
yes,
but now you're holding it hostage. So what is your main content? And you have some issues with the current form of the GST Bill as well. What are your main points as far as the GST Bill are concerned, and why you opposed to it in the present form?
Well, that has been to the standing committee and to various committees. Let us see how, when it comes to Parliament, let us see what is the final version. If we have an issue with those, we will point those issues out. If we are satisfied with the bill, we will take an appropriate decision. But the more important question is, will the Parliament function for GST to be debated? And I'm telling you, it will not function if remedial action or the necessary action or the action that the people of India expect from the Prime Minister, where the ministers who have been caught up into this controversy, is taken.
You know, the BJP is going to come out and say the same thing that they've been saying over the last 1 year, saying that, you know, the Congress is holding crucial bills hostage in Parliament and they're going to continue to do so. They are anti-development and that's how the BJP is going to project the Congress.
I think the obstinacy of the BJP leadership itself is compromising the passage of the bills. And they are squarely to be blamed if Parliament does not function. You can't say that we will act in a manner that will invite the ire of the opposition and the opposition by the opposition, and then say that the opposition is not letting Parliament function and not letting the bills be passed. We believe in being a constructive opposition. We have supported the government in the past on critical issues. We will continue to be a constructive opposition. We do not want to derail the economic and social development of the country, but we will not be party to a partisan political agenda of the BJP government, which is totally insensitive to public opinion on issues that have caught the imagination of the people, certainly matters relating to illegalities and corruption in high places.
All right. You know, I think we've got one thing clear and one thing sorted out, that the Congress is not going to allow the House to function as long as their demands are not met. So let's talk about something else now. Let's move on and talk about the International Day of Yoga. The Congress boycotted the entire event, did not be a part of the event, but the event was hailed across the globe. It was hailed as a success. People were participating across the globe. We saw pictures from Paris. We saw pictures from the US being beamed back to India. So why was the Congress so opposed to the International Day of Yoga? Are you against anything that is Indian in nature?
Certainly not. We are proud of our heritage as far as yoga is concerned, and leaders of the Congress party themselves have been practicing yoga. Whatever is good for the health of the people, mental and physical, is certainly to be appreciated. The only point that we were trying to make is, was there a need? And I asked this question to myself, was there a need to brazenly politicize a culture or a tradition which is very much embedded in our heritage and in our ancient civilizational ethos? The point is that you try and send certain kind of messages which are not so innocuous as people would have it believe. Around yoga was built a kind of polarizing message, which I think was not the right.
What was that polarizing message? Because well, the BJP tried to be inclusive, they tried to include everyone, but what was that polarizing message?
But we saw in the papers other communities objecting to certain parts of the issue. I think it could have been handled better and it needn't have been politicized. We didn't need to see, of course it is his own desire and wish and we can't question that, but we didn't necessarily have to see the Prime Minister on the Rajpath doing a yogic asana when there are so many other critically important issues.
He was not leading the event though. There were others who were leading it on the stage. He was just a part of the event.
Well, when the Prime Minister is a part of the event, he is the event. Remember that.
All right. Let's move on now and talk about polls that are going to take place shortly. Of course, the Bihar polls are around the corner, just a few months away, of course. What is the Congress's strategy as far as Bihar is concerned? We know of the Grand Alliance. Is that the way forward to beat the BJP?
We are certainly going to have the defeat of BJP as the center of our strategic focus. Whatever is required to be done for that will be done. The Congress leadership will be taking a lead in seeking to forge the unity of the secular forces in Bihar in order to inflict a crushing defeat on the BJP.
Is that the only way forward? Because the Congress cannot take on the BJP by itself. So forming these alliances of sort, anti-BJP parties coming together to try and bring down the BJP in states.
Well, what is so unusual about it? In states where we are in a relatively weaker position, we will team up with our allies so that we avoid the splitting of votes that are quintessentially against the BJP and the ideology of the BJP. It is a perfectly valid electoral strategy. And where we can take them on ourselves, we will continue to strengthen ourselves and take the BJP on ourselves. And while we seek to forge alliances in states where we are not so strong today, we will continue to strengthen our organizational base and our appeal, and that is what Mr. Rahul Gandhi is seeking to do. By traveling all over the country and by raising issues that have a resonance with those on the margins, which was the constituency that Congress always worked for, I think we have created an all-India resonance, and we will continue to proceed in that direction. Let me tell you, today is a time when we need to reassert idealism as the central underpinning and the edifice on which democratic politics should rest. And idealism of the Congress is related to subserving the cause of those who live on the margins, that those who need to be empowered are our core concern, and we will continue to reach out to them. And I have no doubt that this country needs a strengthened organization, that is the Congress organization. I have no doubt that before long, people will realize that Congress as the party of the future, Congress as the party of the liberal Indian ethos, Congress as the party of nationalism and national renewal has to be brought back to governance.
You know, talking about how the Congress is the party of the future and you're going to do extremely well in the future, and how you need a strong opposition voice. I think there are several people out there who believe that you do need a strong opposition voice. And, you know, we've seen a rejuvenation of sorts within the Congress party, because the Congress party did not seem to have any kind of a direction or an aim a few months ago. But after we saw Rahul 2.0, there was a tremendous change within the party itself. What prompted that, really?
I think Mr. Rahul Gandhi is leading from the front, and he's taking up the right issues, and he's showing an emotional connect with the people, and that connect is now emerging visibly across the country. And certainly that is all that was required. Congress has a presence in every village in this country. It's the only party in the country that has a presence, that has a connection, that has cadres, that has an organization in every village. In certain states, in certain areas, we need to strengthen the organization. That's a fact. We are going to do that. But how do you strengthen the organization? A, by creating an ideological overtone which has resonance with the people, and by asserting the core ideology to which you are committed. And then around that, build a group of young, dynamic leaders and leaders with wisdom and experience and vision, bringing the two together in a dynamic kind of cooperation, and you have a dynamic party. That's precisely what we are trying to do.
You know, talking about Rahul Gandhi, there were several reports in the media earlier this year saying that he would take over from Mrs. Sonia Gandhi in April and be the chief of the AICC. Then there are reports of several people talking about how he's going to take over in September. Is that going to happen? Is that not going to happen? What's happening within the party?
So much has been conjectured on this issue. So many views have been expressed that I would only be adding one more view. Let me just say this, that Rahul Gandhi is the leader of the Congress party. He is the future president of the Congress party. When he takes on the office formally, is for the Congress president, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, and the working committee and the leadership to decide. And I'm sure a right decision at the right time will be taken. But make no mistake that Mr. Rahul Gandhi will lead the Congress in the future, and he has all the capabilities for doing so.
All right, that we'll have to wait and see, of course, what happens as far as Rahul Gandhi is concerned. One final question before I let you go. In the, recently, last week, we saw, a senior leader in the West Bengal left party, of course, come out and say that there might be a tie-up between the Congress and the left in West Bengal to beat or to defeat Mamata Banerjee and her party. Is that something that you're considering?
Well, I think the CPM leaders have spoken on that, and recently Mr. Sitaram Yechury hinted that in Parliament, around issues, there will be cooperation between the Congress and the CPM. How that unfolds in Bengal, we don't know yet.
Yeah, they've been allies in the past, so it's not going to be too difficult to be allies in the future.
We have worked with them in the past. But of course, both parties will have to take a considered view on this. And I think it is for the leadership of the two parties to take a call.
All right, Mr. Ashwani Kumar, pleasure having you on the program. We'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us on Rajya Sabha Television and sharing your thoughts on several of those very crucial subjects.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time. Bye-bye.